everyone, and welcome to a Modern Sales Pros event. I'm super excited to get started with this amazing panelist that we have here today to talk mastering the art of closing sales. Before we begin, I'd love to kick things off with a fun little icebreaker as we let folks trickle in. I'd love to ask, now that it's fall in North America, and there's a lot of great fall television shows coming out. I'd love to know, for our panelists, what is your favorite TV show? What shows are you currently watching? Are you rewatching old classics? Let us know. And we'll kick things off with David.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I just started watching Game of Thrones. I know I'm like 10 years behind or something like that, but gosh, the first episode got me, and I'm definitely hooked.
Nice, that's a good one. Molly, what about you?
Game of Thrones, you cannot go wrong. I'm almost envious that you get to experience it for the first time. I just last night kicked off season 3 of The Morning Show, which is Apple TV. I love both Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. And this season we have John Hamm, who I'm an enormous fan of from Mad Men. So getting settled into season 3 of The Morning Show.
I heard that's an amazing show. Good
It's pretty
call
good.
out. Nate, what about you?
Yeah, that sounds, both those answers sound a lot more interesting than what's happening in my house. So I have a 3.5-year-old, and so we are, if, for the people who are familiar with that age range, we are transferring from Blippi to Paw Patrol. What's most exciting is that we're not watching reruns of the same shows over and over right now. So that's what's happening in the Nate Broom household.
I love that. My nephew loves Paw Patrol. Katie, let's end it off with you. What's your favorite show or what you're currently watching right now?
I'm really excited about The Continental. It's Winston's backstory, if you guys are John Wick's fans. And the first episode just came out, so that'll be on my watch list.
Oh, wait, what streaming platform is that? I'm a huge John Wick fan.
I think it's on Peacock.
Oh, okay, another streaming service I have to add on my list. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for sharing, and let's dive right in. But before we begin, I'll say a few words from the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those of you who are not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them to see around corners they may not know about. We do this through live sessions like the one you're at today. We also have an online robust forum, and we also have our quarterly summits, which I'll talk about in our next slide. And we also have our in-person events. So I hope you were there at Dreamforce Happy Hour in SF a couple weeks ago. We have more of that coming up before the end of the year. And speaking of our summit, we have our upcoming Sales Fever Summit. So get ready to get grooving for our Modern Sales Pros Revenue Excellence Summit. We have 3 days full of content in RevOps, enablement, sales leadership, development, and management. You can hear from speakers at Drift, Gainsight, ZoomInfo, and more. It's at October 17th to the 19th virtual, and I'll drop the link to register for free in the chat. So be sure to check us out there. And some housekeeping notes. This event is being recorded, so if you have a friend or colleague who couldn't make it, rest assured the recording along with key takeaways will be made available on the MSP previous event page before the end of the day. Second, if you have a question for our amazing panelists, please use the Q&A function at the top right-hand corner or leverage the chat, and also let us know where you're calling in from. Next, this event wouldn't be made possible without our sponsor for today's event, Calendly. It is a hub for scheduling meetings professionally and efficiently, eliminating the hassle of back and forth emails so you can get back to work. You can learn more about Calendly here. I'll drop the link in the chat. Definitely check them out. They're doing awesome things. Now, enough about me and MSP. I'm super excited to introduce our awesome panelists here today, and I'm going to pass it off to our moderator, David, to kick things off, and then I'll come back for closing remarks. So David, take it away.
Hey, well, thanks for joining us, everybody. We're so excited to dive in, talking mastering the art of closing sales. I'm so excited to dive in with this panel. So my name is David Delaney. I run Tenbound, which is research and insights on building your pipeline and closing more sales. So it's a perfect opportunity to dive in here. And we're over at tenbound.com. You can sign up for free on the newsletter. On our panel, we have Molly McKinstry. Molly?
Thank you, David. And yes, thank you, Angelica, for the warm welcome. And Katie and Nate, so happy to be here with you both. I'm Molly McKinstry. I'm the VP of Sales at Calendly. And yeah, also very excited about the conversation today. I've spent 11 years of my career in tech sales at Glassdoor. I was the Global Vice President of Sales there before joining Calendly about a year and a half ago and having a bunch of fun in the unique selling environment we find ourselves in.
And I think Molly just went on mute.
Yeah, Katie, do you want to intro yourself?
Yeah, nice to meet everybody. Thanks for joining. Katie Harkins. I'm based in San Francisco, and I've been with usertesting.com for 5 years, and excited to dive into today's topic. I was like a lemonade stand kid, so I've been in sales my entire career, always working in tech, and user testing I've seen grow over the last 5 years. We've been around since 2007, but we IPO'd in 2021 and recently got acquired by Thoma Bravo and Sunstone Partners. So it's been a crazy ride, but I'm excited to learn from the folks on the panel and, of course, everybody chatting in today. Nate, over to you.
Hey, great. Thank you, Katie. Good to be here, David and Molly. So I am the SVP Sales at Captivate IQ. I am starting today my 5th week here. I spent the previous 6 years at Outreach leading the global SMB and mid-market teams for them. And for Captivate, we're the leading commission software in the space. And so what we're really trying to do is help give people time back, but also drive individual sales productivity by giving people a clear understanding of their comp plans, their sales targets, how to achieve, and ultimately how to get paid.
I love it. That's what I love about modern sales pros is they bring together experts. And this is such a great topic to talk about because everyone's trying to close deals right now, and especially in this environment that we're in especially in the tech industry. It's definitely a weird environment, and it's how can we make sure that we not only build pipeline, manage the deals that come in, and then close them on time and on budget. So first and foremost, let's start at the top of the funnel. So we see right now that we're navigating really inconsistent inbound lead volume and needing to optimize outbound more than ever. So Molly, when you think about those challenges, how do you think about operating in the current environment?
Yeah, well, I agree with this as a question generally, that inbound volume is more inconsistent than ever. Last month at Calendly, we ran Growth Week, which was a webinar event for sales, marketing, and CX professionals. And over 63% of the participants said that they have seen a decrease in inbound leads in the last 12 months. Not at all surprising. We also know that 71% of sellers are saying they are having to outbound more than they did in the previous 12 to 18 months. So this is a trend I think all of us we are seeing consistently. I think given this, there's a couple of things. Outbound is as required as ever to have confidence in your pipeline and your pipeline consistency. Budgets are being more scrutinized than ever. And you need to understand not only what percentage of your sellers' times are going to outbound efforts, but how are those converting and where are you seeing success? And where you're seeing success, how to create more of that. So I want to get really specific of who we're reaching out to, what ICP or what buyer persona, what subject line is working, or what kind of quick message in a voicemail or a Loom or a Vidyard recording, what is working, where are we getting responses, so that your outbound efforts are ones you can learn from internally. And I think just one more point before I'll pass it to my panelists here, my co-panelists. I think it's really important to align on and understand that the goal of outbounding is an initial conversation or just time with this prospective buyer or customer. So I think oftentimes people can get really intimidated by an outbound effort means a committed closed deal. No, we are looking to earn the right to a conversation. So all of your focus needs to be how to do that, how to differentiate yourself from the other messages that they're seeing and receiving. But I'd love to hear from Nate and Katie on it.
Yeah, Katie, what are you seeing out there as far as inconsistent inbound and the importance of outbound?
Yeah. So what I love about sales, it's like the only career you can have where you can give yourself a raise any day because our W-2 is up to us. And so outbound is essential for any sales organization, regardless of size or even like tenure in the market. Because your ability to outbound is your ability to diversify where your pipeline's coming from. One of my old mentors talked about this like swimming pool analogy. So if you had an empty swimming pool, it's like how many hoses could you use to fill it up? One of the hoses is inbound. And that one you can't control, depending on your marketing budget, maybe. But after that, it's referrals from your customer base. It's a hose of outbound. It's a hose of maybe partnerships. And so the more hoses you have in that pool, the quicker it's going to fill. Same thing with your pipeline. And so that outbound hose has to be going all the time, and it has to be consistent. And in 2023, it has to be not just email. There's LinkedIn. You can text somebody. Nowadays, we set up a Slack channel with our prospects, like live where your prospects are living. You can tweet at people, right? There's other ways to get people's attention. And so I just try to encourage people to get as creative as possible with that outreach. And then, of course, partnering with your demand gen team. Like sales and marketing is a bullet and a gun. They work really well together, but separate, they're useless. And so you have to be on the same step with your marketing team and with your demand gen team of what's resonating, especially now in the market, and how can you double down on what's working. I don't know, Nate, if you have anything else to add.
Big time.
I love the, as a sales leader, I love good analogies. I hadn't heard the pool one before, so that was pretty good.
The more hoses, the better.
The more hoses, the better. I can get behind that. I think, as I think about the transition from inbound to being more reliant on outbound, which I think almost everybody is the case at this point. I think Molly had a great point in the sense that we look at in sales, we look at everything zero sum. You either won a deal or you didn't win a deal, right? And when you're doing outbound prospecting, what are those leading indicators? What are those micro wins that, hey, I got a conversation. I had 5 conversations. 5 conversations led to a meeting. 1 meeting led to, and you kind of work the waterfall. Like it's super, super important, right? And so I agree with that. I think the other thing I would add instead we did an outreach, and then I'm actually rolled out an hour ago at Captivate, is an operating rhythm, right? And one of the challenges that our modern sellers have is let's be real. This is the hardest time to be a seller, arguably in all of our professional lives, right? And so we're being asked to do more, work harder, cover more ground. In the spirit of everything that's happening with market contraction and layoffs, now maybe we're wearing more hats than we were 12, 18 months ago, right? And so at Outreach and then at Captivate, we've rolled out an operating rhythm, which effectively time blocks the things that we need reps to do throughout the week, right? So whether this is your outbound prospecting time, which is pretty common, but we even get as rigorous as this is when we're going to get together and do deal strategy. This is when we get together and do film review. This is when we're going to get together and do training. And what that allows the reps to do is navigate their work week, check all the boxes on what they're supposed to be doing that leads to bigger wins, and helps everybody feel accomplished, like we're actually moving the needle, right? Because I think average age of my seller at Captivate is 27 probably, so they're 2-3 years into their sales career. At Outreach it was something similar. They just don't know how, right? And so giving them the pathway and the plan helps them hit the marks that we need them to hit.
I want to just jump in really quick because I think that's such a good point, Nate, that not only are you kind of creating the space and the expectation of time spent on outbounding, but actually really inspecting and understanding what that looks like. And, age kind of agnostic, just we are selling in modern times and it's very different. And the use of AI and the need for automation and personalization, it's transformed, I think, even in the last 2 to 3 years, and AI specifically in the last 1 year. So I think as sales leaders, we can easily feel like, oh yeah, we've got our outbound KPI metrics and we can pat ourselves on the back and our team knows what they are. But you do, as a sales leader, and your frontline and your second line leaders absolutely need to be inspecting and also celebrating those outbound efforts. What are we learning? Where are we having success? What's working? And again, not just the closed deal. What's working to get the conversation, right? Because that's what we're celebrating, I think, in an outbound motion.
Yeah, I think the analogy that I use when I talk to my leaders about their role in our operating rhythm is, think about if you ever had a physical trainer at the gym, right? So what does that physical trainer do? You walk in, they're right at the door, they're high-fiving, they're creating energy, it's 6 a.m. in the morning, you don't want to be there, but they're happy that you're there. They're running you through cardio, you don't want to do the cardio, but like you feel really good after that 30-minute sprint. And then you get to the weights and you got to start, putting up weights and doing the repetitions. And then they're coaching your form. They're encouraging you along the way, right? They're high-fiving you and they're giving you tips, and they're doing those things. And that's how I see the sales leaders, as part of the operating rhythm. Is the reps are going through it, but the leaders are these physical trainers who are encouraging and showing form and incorporating things like AI and tooling, kind of into the conversation.
I can add one more if you don't mind, David. And I think Molly was alluding to this, but like just share. Like BDRs, SDRs, AEs, it doesn't matter. What's the subject line that's working? Like the early top of funnel, what worked to get a conversation going? What content? What time of day? Like when was it sent? How? Screenshot it and create a Slack channel on outbound wins. And that way you can start sharing what's actually working within the organization, regardless of vertical or segment, because everybody needs the help.
It's so true. And there's so many points because, sales is sort of that blend of art and science. And it seems like a lot of us got into sales because we're more the art part and the persuasiveness and the communication and applying that science to it. I think it's hard for a lot of people. And especially if you don't have good sales leaders who are creating that cadence and that, personal trainer analogy, then you have to do it yourself. And we have to hold ourselves accountable to doing it. And I get a little nervous when I hear about like an SDR team that's hybrid. So they do inbound and outbound because they're such different jobs. But when you're in sales as an AE, you have to do both at all the time. So it's nice to have that set calendar cadence set up and then have a trainer, helping you out. And Katie, to your point, people, a lot of salespeople are real lone wolves. It's a very competitive sport, and they don't really want to share all the information. So building that collaborative environment is probably not super natural, but it's so helpful for everyone to be able to share their.
The question I would ask is like, do lone wolves even have a place in modern sales at this point, right?
That could be another webinar, right? Yeah. I mean,
selling is a team sport, right? We always make the joke like testing is a team sport, but so is selling. Like, because you get multi-threaded in an organization, it actually helps you increase your average deal size. But it might feel like it slows down your sales cycle, but it doesn't when you bring an expert in from your organization of like how to set up Calendly for product teams, or how to test your prototypes or your wireframes or your new feature releases. It's like, get more people in there, and that way you get more multi-threaded in the organization and like come across as a market leader. So it helps.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. And it's not just on the selling side. That's how our buyers are buying. Our buyers are buying amongst committees, and they want multiple, folks internally to vet and agree and kind of sign off. So I totally agree that selling is a team sport. And, I thankfully run into very, very few lone wolves. And, maybe to Nate's point, it's just not really a thing in modern selling. But I think as a leader, the way to avoid or break through any of that very individualistic kind of sales mentality is celebrate the collaboration and the team. Celebrate the team wins. Instead of in a wins channel just highlighting the AE, highlight every other person that played a hand in that deal, the BDR, the SDR, legal, deal desk, everybody. And that is a way that people, I think get really galvanized by sharing, by lifting others up. And, you're setting the tone as a leader that we're a team. We win together. We lose together and we win together.
It's huge. Yeah. Well, I'm bought in. I agree. Right now, we have to fill the pipeline, and we got to go outbound. And there's the team effort, the tools that are there, the coaching. Molly, when you think about filling the pipeline to help the sales team hit the targets, where do you start?
Well, now I have Katie's amazing swimming pool analogy. So like Nate, I had not heard that before. So I get to reference that, and I will absolutely credit her. I think we've touched on some of these, but let's dig in a little bit deeper. I want to talk specifically about how critical it is to ensure alignment between sales and marketing. Again, something we've already touched on, but now more than ever, economic uncertainty, like a very, very dynamic shifting sales environment, these two teams have to be operating in lockstep and very, very clear and aligned on what are the goals, what are the personas we're going after, what are the events we're hosting, where are we in the market, so that there is no confusion or surprise of who's doing what. So I think this is a good chance to understand from a pipeline perspective, are you and your marketing team in lockstep about what the goals are and who is accountable to impacting what percentage of those goals? Though, at Calendly, we always say, like, pipeline is pipeline and we all want it. And I'm less concerned about who did what, as long as we're all carrying our weight and we are all committing to do the absolute best we can. So I think that's just a really important component of the sales and marketing relationship. Another thing I would say is, where can you increase your competitive advantage? And obviously this is different for each organization and depending upon, your market fit. But if there are different places where your sellers can get time back in their day to focus on the activities that really impact their own ability to build and cultivate pipeline, do that. And so obviously no surprise for us at Calendly, we heavily believe and subscribe to the concept and idea of automation. So we want, our leads to be able to click on a Calendly link directly from our website in a request or talk to sales form. And within minutes, they are booked with the salesperson, or if it is a support person, to have the conversation. So you cannot sleep on action. We all have heard the saying, time kills deals. But again, we're not talking about closing the deal. We're talking about converting a lead and building the pipeline. So I really like to be myopically focused on what part of the process. And for pipe gen, you have to know where leads are falling off and very quickly understand how to solve that.
I love it. And Katie, how are you thinking about building the pipeline?
Yeah, so we have something called deposits and withdrawals internally. So how are you making deposits with your prospects or customers to eventually take the withdrawal? So if they're hiring, are you providing interview questions that would help? Or if they're, an individual user, how are you helping them get a raise internally with your product? And so the more deposits you make with your prospects and your customers, eventually you can make the withdrawal. And then the other piece of pipeline build is, I would say, don't be afraid to ask for referrals from your current customer base. They close quicker, those leads do. And when they're coming from a colleague that might be at a different company that has used your product for, 5 or 10 years, that referral is worth its weight in gold. And I just see sales organizations forgetting that it's an easy way to build pipeline when you're on customer calls, is just asking hey, do you have anybody in your network that you think could benefit from this tool? And then another play I love is we call them cancel opportunities, but anybody that might have churned in the past, figuring out why and re-engaging with those sales cycles versus letting them go to die. It's nope, they used your product, they bought your product in the past. maybe somebody got let go that was a champion internally, but re-engaging anybody that was a previous customer is also a great way to build pipeline.
Did you call those cancel-tunities?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a opportunity. It's a problem, but it's an opportunity with clients.
We got deposits, withdrawals, the pool analogy, cancel-tunities. Like Katie's, I love it. They got all the phrases. That's awesome.
Yeah. Now we just have to automate everything and put, everything on autopilot. We're good to go. So Nate, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so I think how I look at this is that the landscape is that we've already talked about is just ever changing, seemingly by the quarter, right? And I actually maybe will offer a little bit of a contrarian take, or at least maybe a different tactic. Is what I've always had my sales teams do is build a call it pathway to quota, 110% plan. There's different names for this, right? Is kind of start out at the beginning of the quarter is like, hey, what's your plan, or period, depending whatever it is, and what's your plan to get to your number, right? And it's a different way of looking at a pipeline review, but in the sense of what are the deals that are going to make up X% of your pipeline, right? What's the bucket of deals that you're going to need to convert 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 6 of these deals into late stage, and then where's your deficit? Where are your gaps in there, right? And then let's talk about how you actually fill those gaps. Like, can we expect anything inbound? We might be able to, but what are you going to do outbound? Where's it going to come from? Cancel-tunities or whatever the phrase is. Like maybe that's it, right? Maybe you have a patch that you can go after. But when I've looked at the pipeline and kind of looking at it that way, that gives the reps like something tactical to hang on to, right? Is like, I need to go and convert, I need to go and create this much amount of pipeline, and then we figure out, we use whatever our tooling or our process or our market is to like go and figure out how to go fill those gaps, right? And then what the result of that is that every rep on the floor should have a rough idea as to how am I going to get to my number, right? And I think we all know that it's harder and harder to get to the number than ever before. But if reps have a pathway, if reps see a light, they'll run through, right? And so we just got to give them that. So
yeah. No, and it's interesting to divide it out into, there's all this stuff out there that you cannot control. And one of them is getting inbound leads. You might not get any inbound leads for a long time. I'm sure that marketing's working on it, but outbound and your own day and the way that you schedule things, totally within your control. And the best salespeople are really good about that. Good.
Yeah.
And the question came in. Yeah.
Sorry, David. I was just going to say to that, I know marketing is doing everything in their power to help amplify the inbound funnel. But another thing that, maybe we haven't touched on too much is just understanding your ICP, because all pipeline is not equal, right? All pipeline isn't going to convert at the same percentage. And clearly all of us have our ideal buyer and the use case that we know we can just win all day again and again and again. And so I think as we think about building pipeline, we have to understand not only what percentage of our time is spent where, but how are we cultivating and taking care of that ideal ICP? And back to the idea of sharing and celebrating where we do have those wins, and also connected to the customer referral component that Katie raised. If you know that you just have this very sweet part of the market and you have happy customers and you can use them as referrals, I just think that that's such a great kind of groundswell or momentous part of pipeline generation that, we can't ignore. And as sales leaders, taking forecasts and looking at, what is the revenue predictions, we have to understand the use cases that are across our pipeline, because they're not all going to convert at the same likelihood or, under the same kind of rules that maybe we are used to. So don't sleep on your persona and understanding who loves your product the most. And I think you really want to orient time as much as you can there.
A big time. And it brings up, the targeting. We see a lot of companies where you would think the first thing you want to do if you're working cross-functionally with marketing and SDRs and sales is work out what is our ICP and our persona. But in practice, you can still find a lot of companies are very siloed. They don't really talk to each other about that. They're running disjointed campaigns, and they don't even have a way to mark in the database if something is their ideal customer profile and persona. So it's and again, it comes down to, as a salesperson, if you don't have all that set up and your organization is not as far along, it's pretty much up to you to become an expert in those and spend your time in the place. Yeah.
And it's like, the topic of the webinar is, the master of the art of closing sales, right? The mastering the art of closing sales. And a lot of what we talked about is top of funnel. And I think that, part of the art of actually closing sales is that top of funnel qualification, effort takes place, right? Is that, if these opportunities get down funnel, AEs are going to work them, but maybe they shouldn't be. Maybe the closing rate is so low that like it's not even worth anybody's time, and then that is potentially distracting them from either the right opportunities and spending effort on the right opportunities that are going to have a higher propensity to close, or spending time on going to get those opportunities, right? And it's so, we get so fixated on this idea of like pipeline, because that's what the boards call for, that's what the CEOs call for. That's like the tried and true thing, but it has to be the right pipeline. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing your tail like mid-funnel to try to hit your number.
Well, that's a really good question. A point to ask this. So we had one question come in. How do you prevent your customers from ghosting? And I'm assuming that's also prospects. So you're in a good conversation and suddenly they disappear.
I can take that one. So I just recommend asking them, how do you prefer to communicate to get this done? Is it Slack? Is it text? Is it phone calls? Is it Zoom? Is it email? And like actually just ask, right? You'd never know if they prefer a Slack channel. We've actually closed companies via Slack, and we're sending the DocuSign via Slack because we just create a public channel with them and us, and then we're communicating there. But also, people don't ghost when you bring other people that make them look good. So like if you're trying to help somebody get a raise internally and while purchasing a tool, like they're not going to ghost when you're going out of your way to help them and make them look good. So like, there's the rapport piece too. Like, do I know now Nate has an 11-year-old and I should pick his brain about, kids or 3-year-old kids stuff to do on the weekends? There's like little things that you can listen for, or especially with the holidays coming up, it's like just asking, like, what are your Halloween plans? Like, what are you going to be? Where do you go for Thanksgiving? What are you excited about in December? And that way, that you're not going to get an out of office out of the blue when you're trying to get something signed.
I just see you like sliding up to them at the pool on vacation and being like, so can we talk more about this? But sorry, Nate, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that tactically that we've looked at Captivate is, so one of the first things I looked at in the last few weeks was, hey, what's the state of our current pipeline? What's deal momentum look like? How are we progressing from one step to the next? And what I found was obviously spots of brilliance, spots of greatness, right? But then I found a lot of area of opportunity in coaching, like any new sales work I would find. And so one of the trainings we did a couple weeks ago was this idea of the ACE framework, right? And so so you start every call out with, hey, appreciate your time. Shows that we're on equal footing. Whether you're a CEO and I'm an AE, right? It's a time check, right? So we're going to be sales professionals. So, hey, so it's the C, right? So it's the, hey, are we good for the next 45 minutes of this 45-minute long call? And then the E is the most important part of the ACE framework, which is the end goal, right? And so setting up, kind of putting our Sandler hat back on for a second, but like setting up an upfront contract to say, hey, Molly, if today's agenda is XYZ, I hope to accomplish Y, and if this goes well, we're going to move to Z. Do you agree with that, right? And typically, we don't do that basic sales professional, fundamental is what I would call it, and that usually gets people to kind of co-create the solution, and then agree, and then they're agreeing to the next step ahead of time, so you can schedule it right there on the call.
Yeah, I think it's a good point because what both Katie and Nate you're referencing is just, did you set the right expectations early on? And so if you are being ghosted, so to speak, from your customer, chances are we didn't actually set and manage expectations the right way, whether it is how and where they like to communicate, or what the process would be looking like should we agree to continue the conversation. So it's not that it's too late once they've ghosted you, but I do think you need to take the learning from that and earlier, just as you're getting to know one another, yes, build that rapport, but yes, confirm how they like to communicate, where they want to be found and reached, and what you're going to ask of them throughout the process. Because I think customers, it definitely is a little bit of a Sandlerism as well, but like you need to give them permission to tell you no, because people want to, they avoid conflict or confrontation or discomfort. And so as salespeople, actually, we want prospects to tell us no if that doesn't work, or no, we're not aligned. And you have to give them permission to do so. Because if you don't, and you say, hey, by the way, if at the end of this conversation you don't feel like we're on the right track, or this isn't a fit, please tell me. I would love for you to tell me worst case scenarios I think we may be, and then I don't hear from you in 3 weeks. Just tell me. So you also, I think, prevent the likelihood of being ghosted by just giving them the permission to tell you no, or say we're off track, or we've got to, get realigned on whatever it may be.
What's
Molly,
helped? Oh, sorry, Nate. I was gonna say what's helped in sales cycles is co-building. Like if you co-build a champ deck, or if you co-build the next steps, like here are next steps from our perspective. How about you? How does procurement work internally? What about legal? How about security? Right? Can you co-build that time frame with them so you're working with them versus like against them to prevent ghosts from happening?
Yeah. I think the one thing that I've been coaching our team on this last couple of weeks is that every buyer out there wants to run a great evaluation. They want to be able to say, I crushed this evaluation. I vetted it out thoroughly. This is the right solution for our company. Like this is going to make, this is going to save us money. This is going to make us money, or it's part of a critical project, right? So everybody wants to be able to say that, right? And they are putting their neck on the line, in some cases to purchase your software, your solution, right? And so what I always tell, I've been telling my sellers is that, listen, you've sold our software more than anybody else has bought it. You've sold the software, the space that we're in, more than anybody else has bought it, right? So who's the expert on what a great evaluation looks like? We are, right? So, so we have the opportunity to educate our buyers to say, listen, you might want to, do X, Y, and Z as part of your evaluation, and we might have a process for that. That's fine. But like the best evaluations that I've seen, they actually look like this, right? And as a way to opt people into, following your prescribed, sales process.
Great tips. I'm using these. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of a Sandler sales cycle, it's a trip. they are. But that's another thing. Hats off. They follow their own process.
Right. Yeah. And I did think we touched a little bit too on winning by design with ACE, and, Katie referenced co-building, but winning by design calls it mutual action planning, where it's mutual. It's both parties are kind of committed to what is the action plan we're gonna take from here. I think we are touching on, though, that having a sales philosophy and methodology generally is a good idea.
Better than winging it, for sure. And we've got, there's so much technology that's involved now with the sales process. So Molly, how do you think about leveraging technology to make sure that you're really maximizing every opportunity?
Yeah. So, well, one, I'd imagine both Katie, Nate, and I, we all love technology. We work for tech companies, and think that our products help really differentiate and solve a unique need, right? But there is a ton out there, and all of it is not necessary, right? And all of it for every organization isn't going to be as valuable as it would be for others. So first and foremost, I think if you are a sales leader trying to understand which technologies you should invest in, which are must-have technologies that your team will be less productive, less efficient without, it's first really important to understand how is their time being spent today, and where is time being spent that is not revenue generating. Because I believe, and Calendly certainly subscribes to the belief that you should be using technology to complete tasks or do the work that a member of your team or a human being does not really differentiate or make it better. Hence, something as simple as scheduling, right? Using automation, leveraging AI and a behind the scenes tool for that gives your people time back for the mutual action planning and the co-building. So I think you have to understand where is time spent today that is not driving revenue, and look at what, if any, technology could possibly replace that. Obviously, there's a bunch right now in terms of, AI and the personalization, writing incredible emails, not even just that, building incredible proposals, how to really get into the unique kind of mindset of your buyer. So I know there's a number of different tools out there. SalesLoft's got some outreach, has some Reggie AI. I think Gong is playing in the AI space with Gong Engage. But ultimately, for your organization and for what you need to decide to purchase or not to amplify your sellers, is this going to create a better, more productive, more efficient, amplified selling process that will make buying our product easier and more joyful, to the degree that we're trying to have it be a joyful experience?
Love it. And Katie, any recommendations on technology that's really helped?
Yeah, I'm going to throw it in the chat. So there's this company called UserGems. For those of you that haven't heard it, it tracks your deprovisioned users. So if somebody was using the product at Amazon and is now at a startup, it creates a lead when they move companies. And then again, you're going after your champions who are familiar with your product already. So that I highly recommend. And then there's also this really cool company. They're based in San Francisco. They're called Pathlight. It's like one-on-one, top of funnel on crack. So you can actually see top of funnel activities as well as like follow-up items from a one-on-one, but they do so much more. Their reporting is really good as well. And then Clarity we use internally. And then kind of like what Molly said, make AI your friend. So you can ask it everything, and you might as well use it and make some money from it while it's still free. So if you were trying to sell like Papa John's, right, you could ask like, why should Papa John's invest in supply chain management? And then it'll write you a 250-page essay and then say, summarize this in 4 sentences. And so you can use some of that language to your advantage. And then you can also use it for prospecting. Like if your territory is Texas, you can be like, what companies in Texas that are under 250 employees should use Calendly, or insert your company here. And it'll spit out a list for you of top tier accounts to go after. And that's free, right? So you don't have to pay for it. But those are the tools I would recommend.
Like I said, we need like part 2 and 3 and 4, because you guys have all these great recommendations. Nate, anything really catching your eye to help close deals?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I live on both sides of this world, right? So I'm spending the last 6 years at Outreach, right? So and at the forefront of sales technology. I spent, I kind of did my 10,000 hours talking to CROs and VPs of sales, every single day. And one of the things that was always interesting to me that I come to appreciate later on was that, every sales organization has top performers, top sellers, right? And that's without, some technologies, without limitations of some technologies, right? And I think one of the things, and that I've come to believe is that if you can set clear targets for your AEs and AEs understand, here's how I hit my goals, here's how I hit my targets. You can overcome or accelerate your use of sales technology, right? And I think that the reality is that we're operating in a world where clear winners have not emerged from any of the tech stack, regardless of what you look at the tech stack. Clear winners haven't emerged yet, right? And so everyone's going to have a hodgepodge of technologies. And so making sure that your reps know how to navigate those technologies and those workflows, and then know how it ladders up to their targets and their comp plan is super important.
Super helpful. And so we've just got a couple more minutes, got a ton of great questions, and we touched on this, but Steve was asking best practices, recommendations if you're pretty much on your own. You've got little to no marketing support. We've all been there, and we've gone over some great recommendations, but anything you can help Steve out with?
What's up, Steve? Happy to help. Been in that situation. So meet with your co-founders when they, like, what deck did they use to raise around? Or if they haven't yet, how have they pitched the company in the past? Or if they've recorded themselves, like, doing their value prop, or common objections that they've heard over the past. That's who I would like glue myself to and figure out how they've sold this in the past and how they explain like top 10 to 20 objections. That way you can get kind of like a scripty or like a map from them of how to navigate the first few sales cycles in the organization.
Yeah, I love that. I think also, assuming you have some customers that have, successfully spent money on your company, get just really, really clear and tight on why they chose to do that and, what value they saw, what problem they believe you are going to help them solve. And then that is, an opportunity to grow off of and rinse and repeat to a degree. If they would be willing to be a customer referral, even better. And I think early stage, as you're building your customer base, it's really, really smart and to your benefit to actually create kind of customer referral incentives through the buying process. So, whether that is connected to price somehow or a certain, level of the product they're going to have access to, beta, sandbox experiences. If you can get your customers early, talking about kind of setting that expectation to know you would love to have them open their network and share folks to you, to Katie's point of withdrawals and deposits, make it work for them as well and have them kind of feel the unique and special experience as your customer willing to provide you with referrals to help build your network off of.
Love it.
Yeah, and I would echo. So if you're at that stage, beg, borrow, whatever you got to do, right? You're super scrappy, but definitely echo the referral thing. Katie talked about it earlier. Almost every sales organization in the world knows it's the right thing to do, but it's equally terrible at it. So while you're small, get good at it. And then two is presuming you have some customers, is mapping out who are their competitors, right? And then what industries that they play in as like your initial kind of hunting ground, right? To go after. And then three would be obviously it would be just leveraging the network. So whether it's yourself, it's investors, anybody in the ecosystem. At this point, do everything you can to collect and give favors to trade for introductions, right? And so those would be the three kind of growth hacks that I would encourage you to take.
I love this. Got so many to-dos after this webinar. It's going to take the rest of the day. I got two more very briefly. So Taryn wanted to know if you have effective strategies for re-engaging lost opportunities. And I know, Katie, you talked about user gems, which might be something different, but any other ideas there?
Yeah. So like you lost somebody, let's say you lose them to a competitor. And that competitor is a 12-month contract. You can automate Salesforce reports. So within 9 months, it regenerates for you, or a GCal to yourself to re-engage with that person. Now, I wouldn't go 9 months without talking with them, but that's on the automated side. But we use Sendoso internally. So like same bucket of like close, lost, or ghosting. You can always send them like a Uber Eats gift card or use your own product to re-engage them. So in the user testing world, we'll actually test their website with their ICP or target audience. And if they had a new feature release, we'll test that and actually send it to them. So they get a little taste test of what we can do while we're re-engaging. You could, Sendoso. But like, do you have any product releases that you can re-engage them with? Or pivot teams, right? If you like close loss from one team, like there's a whole other teams that you can go sell into, and you already have that collateral built. So you're not, creating things from scratch. And then like put them in a close loss drip. So if you have helpful content that will help them in their day to day, every 2 weeks, they should get something from you.
Yeah, Katie, one of the things we've done with that idea, and that's a lot more detailed than I've done in the past, so that's awesome, is go back to like the initial discovery call. What pains or challenges were they experiencing, when you first talk to them, right? And what I've always had a lot of success with was just going back and asking, are you still struggling with this? Is this still a pain, right? Because what you're doing is you're calling out that, hey, 9 months ago you came to me that this was a tier 1 priority, or at least enough of a priority to take a call, and 9 months later it's still a problem. You either bought the wrong vendor or you didn't make a decision. But why are you still living in the pain? Why are you still living in with whatever challenge you're trying to overcome?
We call that the mini mantra internally, or asking like, what's changed? Like maybe it's not a problem anymore and they have a whole nother set of problems now that they've solved that thing. And again, re-engaging to open up the conversation. We call it the ping pong, like get that ping pong back and forth of the emails going back and forth between the prospect and yourself, or pivot teams.
Yeah. And I think all of those connect back to the idea, right, that it varies a little bit based on why the opportunity was lost. Was it price? Was it competitor? Was it not high enough with the economic buyer? So understand what the reason is, and then you can game plan on how to proceed, right? So use that information to pick whatever strategy. I think all of those are really thoughtful and good ones. I also would say always give permission, right, to the customer. Hey, you're allowed to tell me no, that's okay if it's not the right time. But am I good to reach out again? And can we stay in touch? And as I see things that I think would be, relevant based on, what you've shared with me, I'd love to stay connected. Very often they're going to do that. And that's, I think, a good kind of deposit opportunity along the way. Send them thought leadership stuff, send them webinars or things they'll love. Don't just go back and ask for the deal again. You've got to earn the right again.
Yeah, like there's so many cool podcasts now you can send to people relevant in their industry and like point out, clip 9 minutes in, I thought of you and your team. Or I like that approach because it makes it sound like you're thinking about them and they're not just a number, but it's more of that partnership that you're going to invest in long term. And so there's always a reason to reach out, whether even just like Google them and they might have gotten a recent press hit and be like, hey, congrats on raising your Series B, or super excited to chat about your new feature releases, like whatever it might be. There's always a reason to reach out. Plus, use the top sales people in your company that might sell for different verticals or segments and run them through your most recent close lost. Be like, hey, I just closed lost this company. Have you ever seen this before? What would you do to re-engage them? And they can do that sometimes blindfolded, and sometimes they come around with some really good ideas that you can steal and utilize in your sales cycles.
Amazing. Okay. This is like drinking from a fire hose. I got one last thing that came in. Molly, I'll throw this to you. How long should be the email, the calendar invite when you're setting up a first meeting with somebody?
How long, how much time should it be?
Yeah.
I think 20 minutes is a good place to start. 15 usually isn't long enough. 30 can sometimes intimidate people. So I think 20 minutes is good. But again, it also depends on what expectation you've set in your outreach, right? And if you book 30 and you let them know out the gate, hey, we may not need all 30 and I'd love to get you out of here in 15. Goal of today is to simply understand, is scheduling something you're struggling with, or to help you understand what other folks in a similar position to you are doing about scheduling. And, if we agree, we can book more time. Great. But I think, 15 to 20 minutes for that very, very first, very initial conversation can be enough. And if you can earn the 30 and they'll give it to you, take it.
Oh my gosh.
Molly, would that be, I'm curious, Molly, would that be is that like the initial like qualification, like call, if you will, like if you put it kind of in SaaS terms, right? Like 15 minutes just to like, are we a fit for you? Or are you a fit for us? And then earn the right to go into like maybe a traditional like discovery call?
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, again, this is going to vary. Is this an inbound lead hand raiser? Is this someone who's already got some exposure to your product? Is this an outbound cold? You have been trying like crazy to get this time. But yeah, the 15 to 20 minutes is really just kind of a table set. Let me tell you a little bit about us. Here's what I know a little bit about you. If we were to continue the conversation, I'd look to learn all of this in our next, interaction. And if it made sense, we'd love to provide a technical demo, but we don't want to do that yet because we want it to be really, really personal and relevant to you and your business, which, today I'm not prepared to do. We got to learn more.
I love that. And there's no better feeling when you have like 30 minutes blocked off and the call ends in 15 and you
Yeah.
actually have 15 minutes to like get something to eat or something like that. So I love that. I'm definitely going to use this. There's so many great tips. I think you got to go back. Everyone will get a recording and you got to go back and like study each of these sales experts and get their tips and utilize them immediately. I mean, you can definitely close more deals with these. Let me see. Any questions that we didn't answer, we'll definitely incorporate in. And everyone's getting a recording. So, key takeaways for me was alignment is so critical, collaboration, and then having some sort of system in place, both at the manager level and as an individual, of being able to focus on things that you can control versus out of your control. Those are high level, big takeaways for me.
Love it. Thanks so much, David. I think we also said, right, sales is a team sport. So lock arms with your partners internally, with your customers, and it's more fun when you do it together.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Molly and Nate, for your time and participation today. And thank you, everyone, for all your awesome questions and attending today's session. Just a reminder that this event is recorded, as well as all the links mentioned, as well as the key takeaways will be made available on the MSP website before the end of the day. So stay tuned for that. And we will see you at the next MSP event. Bye, everyone.
Bye, all.